we're going to actually be live. It's taking its time. So, okay, so there we go. Okay, we are live. That's great. Hello, everybody. Do say hello in the live chat, please. There are several of you there already, which is great. Joseph, good to see you. Good to see you. Hi. Oh, right. Well, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while. What about the others there? 5 of you. Oh, you've all run away. Not to worry. Joseph, good. It's been a while. It was the middle of July, of all things, since we last did a live. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to run through a couple of things. Catch David. Hello. 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 Good to see you. Good to see you. That's great. We're going to run through some things, and I'm just going to update you on where I am with Headspace and the world. I won't take too long on that, honest. Hello, Nancy. Hi, good to see you. Hilda, how you made it? Well done. Good. Joseph, Healing Light, wonderful. Okay, no worries. Don't worry. We'll be on a little bit longer, but that's great. Catch up on the playback if you want to. I'm going to also say OVV. Hello, hi, Lawrence. Hey, good to see you. I'm also going to say that we've got some noises off today because I've got builders here. So that's one thing that's happening in the world. And currently there's a guy just putting a ladder up right outside the window. So this is all excellent. They're great builders, actually. So look, Julie, hello, good to see you. That's great. The really interesting thing that happened fairly soon after we stopped the last lives, and one thing I would say is that when I take a break from the lives, I'm not necessarily disappearing on holiday for the entire 5 or 6 weeks that it's been. I take a break because actually it takes quite a lot of time on a Monday because I do some prep, believe it or not, for this. And so it all adds up, and there's other stuff that kind of just gets backed up through the week. So that's why I take a little bit of a break from the YouTube lives every now and again. I'm wondering, and I'm going to ask you guys, you can give me some response on this, see how you feel. Because would it be better for you if I did longer seasons, builders, longer seasons every other week? Or just if we do 8 weeks at a time, and then I'll take a few weeks off to catch up with other stuff, and then we do another 8 weeks. Let me know what you think in the live chat. Either alternate weeks or longer seasons where we try and keep consistency. Personally, I think it might be better to do consistency now, so we know where we are. And one of the other things is that I think this is so funny with all the banging. Can you hear the banging? Jenny, hello there. Hi, how are you? Hello, Sahar. Wonderful to see you there. Wonderful. Thank you very much for your email. I will reply to that later on. So let me know what you think about whether you want to do alternates or longer regular times. But I also want to see if I can squeeze in maybe some Sunday afternoon sessions as well. Had a few people ask for those, so let's see how that goes. But I think my main thing is that it's good to get a regular time, but just put in there every other week or season, doesn't matter, just stick a word in and then I can get a kind of a feel for it. Right, so what I was saying was, last time, end of July, have a quick look if you haven't seen it already. There's a little video online, don't look now, but wait a chance, about some flooding that we had here. And that was really localized flooding. It literally was just in this part of the Yorkshire Dales. And, oh, Hilda, that's very kind of you. Season from David, right? I'll go back through these. Regular Sahar, yeah. We'll see, right? So we got one of each at the moment. Anyway, look, this flooding, right? It was a remarkable afternoon. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we had, in 4 hours, we had a month's worth of rain, and it just literally just came down. And it was a really interesting experience. Thankfully, we got off really quite lightly, and my heart goes out to those people that in the area that actually got far worse hit than we did. I'm going to make a video about it because because on this channel we talk about manipulating our reality and working with our reality and accepting that that we can look at everything that happens as being part of that sort of relationship with the management. And so I want to make a video about that. So keep your eyes open for that one. JF, hello there. Good to see you. And Regina, yeah, good to see you too. Wonderful, wonderful. And Stevie, hi, good. So I'm going to do a video. Keep your eyes open for that, because it's been an interesting time for several reasons, and I'll try and get all of those points into that video. But it would be rather churlish, I think, if I just ignored the fact that we had flooding. Fundamentally, we're looking at a cleansing process, but let's explore that more in due course. So that's one of the things that's happened, is that we were hit by that flood, and we spent quite some time in the physical world just clearing out. So, but other things are, one of the things that I really hate, and we'll get to questions a bit later, very shortly we'll get to questions. One of the things I hate about myself is if I actually say that I'm going to do something, then I do obviously like to follow through and do it. And I've been feeling for a little while, not only have I been having clients stacked up, for example, waiting for some time, obviously because of the holiday and the flooding and all that stuff. But I mentioned last summer, that I would do some dowsing about beekeeping, about bees, what's good for the bees. Tell you what happened with that. I had a couple of chats. I had a chat with Socrates, he might show up this afternoon, and another lady, Claire, about their bees that they were keeping. And I got so excited about it, I thought, all right, I'm going to go off and find the local beekeeping club. And I did that. I went along to a couple of sessions of beekeeping. And you know what I realized is it's really complicated. It can be really complicated if you want to keep bees. And I got so wound up in the beekeeping aspect of it that I've sort of gone, and I've let it slide. I don't know quite how to approach working dowsing with bees, but I still want to do something. But we're here a year later than I first suggested it, and I haven't done anything. So I wanted to raise that and say I haven't forgotten it. It's on the back shelf, because I think it's really important that we work with these little creatures in this way, clearly. Right? Second thing, this is not about me beating myself up. It's just me clearing the air, bringing you up to date with what's going on in my world, and sharing with you. Okay, Dixie, hey, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. We might get onto one of your questions later on. Online courses. Online courses. Yes, Regina, you mentioned it in your questions. I am working on a short dowsing course, which I want to get online, and I'm using that as a practice for getting the house healing one done. I am finding it incredibly difficult to find the time to actually get onto those things. So it's going to be a slow train coming, but I really, really am going to do it. And it's terrific that so many people are interested in it. So do keep hassling me, but I'm just giving you a heads up that I haven't abandoned it. Online courses on dowsing and the house healing work will be there at some point. In the meantime, I'm working with 8 or so people at the moment, one-to-one sessions, doing the mentoring, and that's including me talking through the process of house healing. I mean, I'm not, I'm not, Regina, I'm not kind of beating myself up with it, although I am. I just want to say it's on its way. These are exciting things to be doing. But if you want to work one-to-one, drop me a line, get in touch using the contact form on the Knights Rose website, and we'll see if we can set you up in a similar way to the 8 or so people I'm working with at the moment. Okay, so all good. That's more or less it. The other thing is, if you have been a client of mine in the past, and again, at this point, I'm not including my one-to-one mentoring clients, but if you've been a paying client of mine in the past, if you dig me out on Facebook, I have recently set up a small group not small group, but a group for clients to discuss for themselves about changes that are happening for them. So that it's a safe space, it's a private group, completely private, and so you can share your thoughts and views on life and how things have been changing, and you're kind of supporting yourselves and learning stuff at the same time from each other and your own, but in a safe space. That's the point of that. And I will be setting up another private group for mentoring students, if that's what you call them, mentorees, and obviously that will include the house healing course when we get to that stage too. So right, I've got a number of questions that have been left before before this session, and so I'll whiz through some of those, and then obviously as we go through, if you want to ask the questions, ask the questions as we go through as well, and I'll try to deal with those too. Do you know what? I always find this a bit odd. I was sitting here just before we went live, and I do find it a bit odd that that we do this. It's lovely, but I find it very strange being such a quiet, shy, introverted person. Yes, truly, I find it very odd that we have these sessions, but I absolutely love it. It's just before we go live, it is terrifying. But what I'm saying is, do ask the questions, because that's why it works. If we have no questions, then I just sit here and stare blankly. So, okay. So look, the bottom line to all of this is that this is really quite, it's quite significant work. And I have to say, I hope she doesn't mind, Sahar, who I think is still online with us, I did a reading for her. In fact, I did it yesterday. And you know what? It really was such a lovely reading. I mean, there's such a lot of information. It's personal stuff. I'm not going to discuss it, but what I'm saying is that this work is so fundamental to what we are as human beings. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? That's why we're actually all so interested in this, is that we know, even if we don't really understand sometimes what on earth I'm perhaps talking about, and the way that perhaps I put it across is not always clear, but we know that fundamentally the energy that we're working with when we're working and doing house healing work and sharing experiences and helping each other and healing. I mean, all of us do a healing when we do this work, right? Even when we're discussing here now, thanks, Sahar, even when we're discussing things now, we recognize that we are all sharing a space, and we might not call it a sacred space because we haven't all come to it in that kind of, very respectful way, perhaps, that we would if we were doing a ceremony or something, but it is a healing space anyway for all of us. So we need to accept that as well, right? So here are some questions. There's a question here from Polly. Now this is Polly. She asked the question on Facebook. I don't think she's terribly familiar with the work that I do. Her question, though, is very fundamental, and it is, Polly says, I'm interested to know if I have communicated with the land or house for any advice for fixing problems. And what she's really saying is, have I, she saw on the header that it says Spirit of Place. So have I therefore contacted Spirit of Place to sort out people's problems in their lives? That's a very clumsy way of, that I now express it. But yes, Polly, really the fundamental approach for any of the house healing work and any of the dowsing and any of the remote work that we do is to actually contact the Spirit of Place in the first instance. So as I sit to douse somebody's floor plan, to douse somebody's property, to work with the management upstairs, to discover what it is that we can raise and pull through into this dimension in order to help the person, then I'm always asking the Spirit of Place, the spirit of the guardian of the place that I'm interrogating, to start the dowsing. I ask them always to, if it is okay, I ask them permission, and I explain what I am about to do in that space. Because we as human beings are really supposed to be, although many of us are not in the global scale, guardians of the physical realm. Okay, I mean, 7.5 billion souls on this planet, guardians of this physical space, supposedly. The guardians of the space, are guardians on that side of the realm, on that dimension, and so we ask permission to enter their space, and we share with them at that time, that context, that information. We are able to receive it partly because the guardian of that space in that energy is allowing us to receive it. Okay, so that's an answer to that one. Yes. So Sahar, actually, there was a really nice thing. Hilda will come on to that. I'm not quite sure. We'll talk a little bit more about your question, Hilda, in a little bit later on. I'll just pick up Sahar's comment there. Sahar's mum passed away a little while ago. And hello, Debbie. Good to see you. Okay. So Sahar's deceased mum, there was evidence on her floor plan where what was amazing was that in the property that we were looking at there were 3 bedrooms more or less in a row. And what I was expecting to find is what I would normally find in a disrupted house. And that is that there were detrimental energy lines going across those bedrooms because of poor sleep, etc. But what was amazing was that while the energy lines were within the building, they avoided the bedrooms. And it was very clear to me that actually Sahar's mother was with me as I was dowsing, and not only that, but also her dear late husband. So the involvement and the interaction of spirit in these activities is huge. And it's the first time, Sahar, that I'd actually seen evidence that a spirit of a deceased relative had actually worked at that level that I would expect to have seen from the guardian of place. In fact, that's the sort of thing that I would expect the guardian of place to be doing, to manipulating the energy line, to be manipulating the energy lines and allowing their flow to change and adjust. So that leads to a question, doesn't it, in everybody's mind? So why, if they're there to be guardians, why do we get detrimental energies? Why do they adversely affect us? Well, do you know what, DJ? I can't answer that one, thanks. Sorry, mate. Why do they allow the detrimental energies to be there in the first place? There is so many reasons for that, because there is so much learning that can be done at that level. Now, if we look back at my example, then yes, Nancy, then I was introduced to all of this. Spirit came to my existence because we moved into this house, not this house, but a house some years ago, and Spirit gently accessed our reality. Basically, we thought we had a ghost in the house. People came around and told us, this is what you've got a guardian energy, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't quite as straightforward as that. But in the first instance, that detrimental aspect was just that. It was quite a scary, spooky sort of thing. It was very new to us as a family. So what if that hadn't been there, I wouldn't be sitting here now. Indeed, yes. I mean, this really is the whole point, JF, is that we analyze and we try to understand exactly what the detrimental aspects are and why are they there. Because for sure, the management are our teachers, they are our tutors. They take us on that journey that they wish us to go on. And very often, geopathic stress can be a sign of them actually wanting to get in touch with the individual, to assist the person to come back onto the track that they perhaps have come off in terms of their spiritual path. And so that's one way that, you know, the geopathic stress can sort of be solved, because in conversation with the client, you know, this reality becomes apparent. It becomes clear that this is what the issue is. You know, not all the time by any means, but sometimes that is the case. So a very simple question from Polly, but actually very fundamental and very deep if we want to go really, really deep. What's the best way, John? We'll quickly pick up this one. John Muckleroy, what's the best way to clean a pendulum? Just do it. I mean, you obviously mean energetically, I presume, because there are all sorts of different types of physical properties of pendulums. But if you want to clean a pendulum, you don't have to sort of, you know, put it in a container overnight in the moonlight or anything like this. But you can, if you want to. You can put it in salt and put it out overnight. That will do it, because your intention is to clean it. But definitely, as far as I'm concerned, all we need to do is to have a pendulum and just simply tune in and ask for the management upstairs or your guardian energy, depending on where you are on your own path, how you relate to the subtle realms, then it's up to you which, aspect of that holy energy you wish to use, that spiritual energy. But you're basically asked them to clear it and cleanse it. So you're doing it with intent. It's the human intent that is asking and pulling forward that energy from that dimension into there. That will do it. When you get a pendulum, if you've got a new pendulum, always thank it and be grateful to it for its arrival with you. If it's gone through the post, or if you picked it up from a shop, if it's leapt out at you in a shop, for example, just be thankful for it and treat it like a pet, like something that's alive, because that's the best way to really work with your dowsing and really move it forward into some very interesting areas, is to be completely relaxed with it and just allow stuff to come through. Okay, so greetings, 1979. Is that your birth date? Linda, good to see you. Okay, so let's just go back up here to Hilda. Witness chamber pendulums. Now, okay, so what you mean by that is that you have a little chamber within the pendulum that you put a witness in, yeah? So that would be like, hello, Anne, good to see you. It's Claire in Ireland. So that you'd put a little sample of something that you're looking for, you would pop it in the pendulum, and that would help you with your concentration. The idea of witnesses, they're called witnesses because they are, I don't know why they're called witnesses. I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know where it's a witness to, it's a thing, isn't it? If I was looking for gold, the idea would be is that I would carry a little bit of gold with me. What that does is it just really, really is about helping the dowser focus on the object that they're looking for. So when we're looking for physical things, then obviously we can have a witness. It doesn't have to be attached to the pendulum. It can just simply be in the pocket, if you wish it to be. But witnesses aren't essential. They may help. And if you feel that they help, then go for it. Use a witness. But if we're doing dowsing that isn't necessarily looking for physical things, then a witness isn't really necessary. It's not going to be used. If you're looking for oil, the oil companies use dowsers as part of their exploration. So do they use a witness? I don't know. I shouldn't think so, because what's under the ground is not what you'd have in a little witness. But yeah, if it works for you, then go for it. Okay. So the other thing, I suppose on that witness thing, Hilda, it is, it's a really good question, because actually, if you think about it, when I'm doing the house healing work, I'm using the floor plan as it's the equivalent of a witness, because it's the device that helps me tune in to the person, to the space that I'm looking at. It's only symbolic. The floor plan is symbolic. It's not, it's not actual. It's not the actual there. I'm not actually there, am I? So a witness does the same thing. It enables the person, if that's what they believe, it enables the person to link into the stuff that they're looking for. So, yeah. I think the thing is with witnesses is that if you get in the habit of using a witness, then you may limit your dowsing as you go along. That's the only thing, right? So just bear that in mind. See how you get on. Practice with and practice without. Okay, so the other aspect of the house healing work, I'll just go back to sort of bouncing off Polly's question a little bit, is that we talk to Spirit of Place and we open up with Spirit of Place, the guardian of the place. You have to excuse, I'm really blurring my labels these days on some of these things, but yeah. What it really does is it sort of enables us to access an aspect of the information that can tell us virtually anything if we're open to it and if it's appropriate. And increasingly, the more you delve into this work, then the more we realize that actually what's important is not the actual physical placement of objects in the physical world. It's very, very much about the context of asking the questions at a particular time. A time and a information exchange. So in other words, I'm a packet of information. I mean, that is what I am. I'm just a packet of information. I mean, science would describe photons, electrons, whatever. If I'm working with a client anywhere in the world, then they are a packet of information. And the other packet of information that's involved in that is, of course, is where on Earth the globe is, the physical globe in the solar system, because it's traveling at X thousands miles an hour through space. It's therefore in a different informational context every moment, right? Every moment. And so if you get into the very deep dowsing, which a lot of this healing work actually is in the deep dowsing, where you've actually got to feel a little bit like your mind is bending to try and grasp the context of, or it's so impossible to grasp that you just think this is nonsense. But if something changes, as I said recently, then it is significant, because if something changes for the client, then the healing has worked. There is a change. There has been an adjustment. Something's worked, even though we might not be able to logically say this is why, because in that dimension, the laws of cause and effect are not strictly bound in the same way as they are in this dimension. A does not necessarily lead to B. It just doesn't. And it takes a lot of getting used to actually shift your perspective and to allow the energies of those dimensions to do their work that they need to do. And part of their ability to do that work is because we step out of the way and we simply take our role as observer, and we don't need to question. Okay? Okay. So, interesting stuff. The interconnectedness of everything. If you can try to, if you can, not try to, if you can sit back and look at your reality, we said this before, we said this in the last series, in terms of the symbolism that is occurring around you, then you start to see how things are interconnected and how things are manifested at just the right time. I know that's corny, but they are. And they have a purpose and they have a structure, which actually does take some unpicking and some analysis. But really, once you get into the knack of looking at stuff in your reality in that way, then you can see how the threads of the issues that we deal with as human beings are all reflected in different aspects of what we experience day to day. And what we're about on this channel is looking at our experience day to day. And within that, looking to really get hold of our potential, right? You know, to recognize the fact that our potential, the abilities of linking into the other dimensions, does give us another facet to being human, and it does give us a practical way to move forward. Now, of course, that does not exclude, it does not assume that we do not feel pissed off with spirit sometimes. It does not assume that we, or even it does not assume that spirit ignores our human reactions. Spirit understands our human reactions. It made us. It knows how we're put together. It knows what we're going through. It is there to teach. And that is how it is our tutors. It knows what we feel. Okay? It knows. It really does. And it knows when we're pissed off. It knows when we're grumpy. It knows when it's angry. And it knows that it's okay to be all of those things. Because that's what you've got to do. That's what you've got to work through. You just got to allow it to go through, and to go through with all the stuff that's surrounding those particular emotions and at those times. Right. Hi, Victoria. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, okay. I look forward to that. Look forward to that. I hope you're okay. So yeah, so really what we're getting at here is massive potential as human beings when we start to really delve into that spiritual side of us. But don't ever forget that you're human as well. That's what we're here for. We're here to experience the humanity. Right. So I've got other questions here. Right. One of the questions I really wanted to get onto, which was, I'm not going to say the lady's name because she's given me permission to talk about this here today, but it's a pretty personal thing. Now, this might ring a bell with one or two of you as well. Dixie, so have I ever had to fix a place where I've slept? No, no, not for me personally. No. Reason I laugh, we ended up briefly in the house where we met Spirit, and we were there for 15 years. That space at the back of the house, which is where we had the two energy lines crossing, was a very, very, very detrimental place to start with. In the end, we ended up actually sleeping over that, in that space, right? It was a 2-story little outbuilding, and we ended up having the top story of that in the end, after some time, as our bedroom. And so in that sense, yes, but it wasn't through a process that I'm now doing in this constructive, structured way. It was a process of learning and understanding, and a slow process in my case of understanding what Spirit was doing and how these lines were affecting everything. So my journey, if you like, Dixie, was one of understanding what it was all about. I mean, crikey, what am I saying? About understanding what I was dealing with, which is why I said to you on the comments section last week to look at the water lines that you encounter. Okay, so yours are not necessarily just the water, they're the heat, the rays that you, as you call them, the lines, as I call them, energy lines. Look at them as a part of you. And the energy lines, look at the energy lines as part of you. The water lines, well, okay. But what I'd say with the water lines, if you can isolate how the water lines actually make you physically feel, right? If it makes you feel a bit nauseous, for example, or a bit kind of like jittery, because we can all get a bit like that with some of this energy, right? So if that's the kind of thing, or is it just a brain fug, then think about what else it is in your life. What has happened in your past, maybe way back, maybe when you were 3 or 4 years old, where you got a shock or a trauma or something like that. What was that about way back then in your life? Is there any correlation that you can see? Obviously, you can't logically say, well, there's a connection between these lines and that trauma, but just see if you feel the same, if your body's going, whoa, reacting the same way, there's something in that energy that is taking you back to that trauma. Now, that might be something that you can work on literally with tapping. So if you work on your own body and see how you then feel, Dixie, in the circumstance that you have previously felt uncomfortable in, that might have helped you a little bit. See how that goes. Reese boy. Nathan, dear God, good boy, good to see you. Yeah, they do, right, okay, jittery, right. Hey, Elena, hi, good to see you, good to see you. Yeah, see how that goes though, Dixie, and drop me a messenger note. So I want to get back to this lady, right, because this is quite interesting. This refers also to NDEs, really. This is about somebody that's passed, and so this lady has issues with her mother, and broadly speaking, is that this lady, out of all her siblings, has sort of been given the responsibility, just because nobody else can be. Nobody else has decided that they want to take up this role. This lady has decided to take up this role of really trying to help her mother. And part of the reason, I'm just going to read a little bit. My mother seems to be very invested in things getting worse and not better. She's in a very bad state psychologically and suffers a lot. When I find things that help her, after the first couple of times of them working, she rejects them. Nothing has the possibility of improvement is allowed anywhere near her. This affects everything around her as well. The dog, the house, and this lady herself is writing. It looks like she hasn't got a chance of changing her mother whenever she needs to be, whatever she needs to be in her life that is bad, even if it affects her too. It stays in her life, right? But she felt that she had the responsibility to help, the lady writing. And I'm finding myself, she says, rather unhealthily entangled, especially since she feels herself close to death. Brackets, I don't know whether she is or not. So if you see, she says, so, how do you do about this? Because I suggested, this is about detachment and that she's got to let her mother, to a certain extent, do her own stuff. And for this lady, there's no point in trying to get in there and change things if she can't change them. What she says is, if you see someone going down a road, let's call it, for want of a better expression, away from the light all their life, apparently without knowing that's what they're doing, at what point do you say, oh, I'll just watch them and let them go that way and stop trying to make them turn around? I suspect if conscious existence carries on after death, then there must be some sort of continuity. And if a person has had that habit all their life of creating lack, sorrow, negativity, loss, disappointments, anger, even if they're provided with evidence to the contrary, then I cannot see they wouldn't reject the love that they might be given after death as well. If they cannot accept that, then that's probably what in some quarters is called hell. So in theory, her energy is lady's concern, but what sort of person would just leave her to that path? Okay, so that's a really, really big, heavy question. And I think that the big difference between my perspective on it and this lady's perspective on it is that I think that when we actually pass, although it is fundamentally our personality that certainly initially goes through and encounters the management on the other side of the veil, and it is primarily in the early days or soon after passing that the personality of Tim remains more or less there. But the ego Tim, I mean, the energy that is me is physicality, of course, is just dissolving over here in the ashes, right? But the personality that is Tim, that has the opportunity when passing to go through and discuss with the management, because this was what Hamish was very, very clear about. My blessed mentor, Hamish Miller, was very clear in his NDE that he was given the opportunity to look at all his previous lifetimes. Now, I know that some of you won't agree with the idea of reincarnation and many, many lives after another, but that was Hamish's experience. And to me, that makes complete and utter sense for so many reasons, and quite a lot of sort of anecdotal experiences that I could relay. But so I think that me, if I passed through, I would be remaining with my energy for the period in which I would assess, how did I do back there? How did I meet the things that I'd signed up to, that I'd agreed to do before I was even born, before I actually started this life? That would take place with me, and I would be given my other lives to reflect upon and to assess. And as I assessed, because the only judgment that occurs on the other side of the veil is a self-analysis. I mean, there is this aspect that is so like ours, it seems, that there is the conscious thought that occurs in the deceased person, in the spirit of that person. And this is why that spirit of that person can come back and witness their own funeral, can come back and visit their loved ones, can come back and visit other people, because that aspect, if we're talking about me as an example, that Timness would remain in that dimension for some period of time. Now, whether that ever dissipates or not, I don't know. If we think about it on the homeopathic principle, that all it would take would be less than one atom's worth of energy to actually maintain the Timness, then all the rest of Tim, in probably the multi-dimensions that exist from our true selves, because for sure this is a multi-dimensional experience to live. It's not just one world. So moving into that dimension allows a lot of this kind of process of collating of all the information from all our lives. So what I'm getting at is, because we're in danger of getting completely lost in this, what I'm getting at is that, and what I would say to this lady is that when mother passes, mother retains her motherness and has those logical conversations with a loving aspect of creation that will have the ability to express its dearest, deepest love, and therefore will access any required level. But that mother will also change, in a sense. To me, there is no hell. I cannot see how there is a hell unless we're living in it now, right? I mean, the experience that I've had of the awareness in spirit, while we now, Nathan, I know what you're going to say, that you've come across some ghosts that have been trapped, so trapped souls. That's a different kettle of bananas, because they haven't passed through to the light, they haven't gone through to that stage. But to me, the extent and the depth of love that is in that next realm is incomprehensible. And so that does not allow energies to exist in a state of torment. So to me, this situation that this lady has with her mother is about one of the life lessons that the lady has to learn. And I suspect that it is about detachment. It is about understanding, realizing her own power. But, you know, we're not into a deep psychological session here. What I wanted to express was my belief and trust in the process that the management has, where the energies of life evolve in every moment, effectively, if that makes sense. Pip, hey, I'm going to keep calling you Pip. I know it's not your name. Yes, bless him. David, good to see you. Do astrological signs have more sensitivity to these energies? For example, I'm a Caesarean, so ruled by water. Could this mean I'm more sensitive, detrimental to water? Absolutely, it could. Yeah, absolutely, it could. Do you know, again, I think there was somebody that was an intuitive astrologer, I think I noticed earlier on. They would be able to tell you far easier than I. But yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, everybody is different. And the astrology is an important part of the energies, the subtle energies that we're made of. So yeah, definitely, David. Hey, Foykan, the full Monty. Good man. No, you didn't miss anything important. The meaning of life, mate. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Sorry. Alexandra. See why I felt the need to watch right now. Your anecdote is what I needed to hear right now. Oh, bless. Okay. Hey, Eileen Eugenie, that's a great name. How I look at it is, after death, it depends on the person's connection to their soul dimension. Now, it's interesting. Yes, it is about their soul connection. It's absolutely, because, but it's not necessarily about their own logical comprehension or their faith in this dimension, as far as I understand it. That's the only thing that I would say. Well, yes, indeed. Well, a ghost certainly is trapped. I mean, a soul that is trapped here and hasn't passed through to the light is exactly what it says. It's trapped. For some reason, there does seem to be a time limit on the portal being open, so the opportunity to go through to the light appears for some reason. I don't know. Bearing in mind that our perceptions of going to the light and portals are from this physical dimension, not necessarily how it actually operates. We don't really know. But they're trapped. So what we do when we're asking for help for those souls is that we ask the management to open that portal and ask the soul to go on through. Just clear it. Just ask upstairs, Lena. If you've moved into a new house, then just clear it. Ask upstairs to clear it with the ultrafine meshed net of light and love, which hopefully, because you've read both books, Spirit and Earth. If you've read Spirit and Earth, then we talk about the ultrafine meshed net of light and love. It's a bit of a clumsy title, but ask the management upstairs, ask your guys to pull that through the apartment and visualize this lovely, shiny, golden white net of light and love. Such a microscopic mesh that it picks up absolutely everything, even at beneath the subatomic level. Just pass that through the apartment and take away all detrimental aspects and all echoes and emotional occurrences that are not beneficial for you and your family. Ask them to be taken away to the light, to be processed for the good of the universe in the future as appropriate under the laws of grace. Okay, you can rewind that if you need to, if you use those words. But yeah, do that. Yeah, I know, Regina, I got no idea. So it's one of those questions that we may never really know the answer to. Great, excellent. Quite often is, Dixie. Yeah, quite often is. I'm not sure it's a soul integrating device, but you can use it. I mean, basically, you can use that ultrafine mesh net of light and love. Ask the angels to bring it in. It's an angelic net, right? So you can ask that. You can clear a space. Even if you walk into a restaurant, let's say, that feels a bit like, oh, gosh, you can ask them to do that and just sit there just for a couple of seconds. Just close your eyes, don't do waggle your hands around. Just ask them to clear that space, take away detrimental energy. And they'll take away the detrimental energy that's detrimental for everybody in the space. So it should feel a little bit nicer. Ideally, do that before you get some oik starting an argument with you, because once the oik has started an argument with you, it's not necessarily going to work. But I don't know why the oik should come up, but there we go. Right, let's look at a couple more questions, because a few of you did leave them on the comments section. I only saw them this morning, which is a bit silly. So Lawrence, if you're still there. Oh, Joseph, hang on, I'll come back to you in a sec. Lawrence, if you're still there. Your dowsing rods keep sticking together when communicating like magnets. Right, so let's just try this. What I'm assuming you're saying, which you say later on, is that they kind of do that, and then they sort of just sit there. Right, bottom line, I've never heard of that before. What I suspect, you say only with two spirits. So these are the same spirits, and the rods behave like that each time. So what you want to be asking is, ask one of these, obviously deal with one spirit at a time. Ask them the questions when you're dowsing. Ask them information about themselves. Obviously, you've done your protection before you're doing this dowsing session, right? Ask them about themselves. Ask them about why the rods are behaving like that in the conversation you're having with them. It's just like talking to somebody, it's just that you can't see them. That's what I'm assuming, you can't see them. So, okay, just talk it through with them. Let me know, let us know on the comments how you get on with that. Really, I mean, if they're doing that, your rods, right? It's got to be something to do with those particular spirits, right? Because there's a feeling with dowsing, when you're dowsing spirits, that you've actually got your rods and there's like somebody on the end of them moving them. I mean, I think a lot of people feel that when you're doing spirit communication. And actually, I think I've said many times that I did do a little dowsing experiment years ago, where I put my hand on the table, assuming this is the table, put my hand on the table holding the rod, and I had letters written out on a piece of card, and I asked Jane her name, and she spelled Jane, right? So the rod moved on its own. It was sitting in my hand like that, completely still to start with, and it just moved, right? So in that sense, I think that Jane was on the end of it, moving that rod. It may well be that's what's happening with you, and they're doing it for a reason. They're either doing it because they're mucking about, in other words, they're a bit impish, or they're doing it because they want you to know who they are, very much know who they are, and to take on board who they are and to listen to them. But you've got two options there, and you don't want to be listening particularly to an impish, mischievous little thing. So you've got to go with your heart and really understand and do the protection. Always do the protection before you douse when you're working with spirits. Okay, the chakra protection exercise. Okay, so let's just, Joseph, why would someone want to actively decide to not walk into the light heard several people say that walking into the light means getting caught in the cycle all over again. Well, you see, the thing is, Joseph, that actually what seems to be quite common around the time of the medieval time in Europe, the church was telling people that they would be met by demons when they passed over. They would be met by demons. Why would the church do that? I don't know. It's all part of the fear controlling mechanism that the church put in place around that time. So a spirit that passes, that has been indoctrinated in that kind of thinking, when, for example, their mother comes to meet them, which is quite often the case, you're quite often met by somebody that you loved in this world, and that spirit comes to meet you. And because there's always the fear of a trickster, of a shapeshifter, and it was drummed into people in the church that it would be a demon that would meet you first. Do not go with the first person you meet when you pass over. Then therefore that time that we talked about, the time of the portal being open, passes because the soul that has moved on doesn't go with the person that was there to meet them. That's one. If somebody is too scared, if somebody has been living this life in a way that just fills them with guilt, and sometimes quite rightly, because they've behaved abominably, then they are too scared to go through to the light because they do not want to be judged by the holiest of the holies, right? Fear in both cases. So, and usually they end up in this horrible mid what do you call it, the mid state. There's a word for it, isn't there? I've lost it. Not heaven and hell, that in between state, but it's when it's just off our dimension, where it's all murky and just horrible. So let's Elaine Eugenie. Okay, David, if I'm clearing detrimental energy and live in a flat, I guess I'll have to say something like for the highest good, or as it may not be appropriate for the energy to be cleared for others. Well, if you live in a flat, you can that energy, that net can be very specific to yours, David. Just visualize it. I mean, you're an artist, so visualize. You'll be brilliant at the visualization. Just visualize it going through yours. That's all you need to be concerned about, is your energy, your space, right? And down through the communal areas. It's always for the highest good. It's always done for the greatest good. You're right. You're right to highlight that. You are, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I've got. Not only have I had builders with the ladders and stuff, I've got radiators gurgling like mad. I don't know whether you can hear them. Yeah. So if you're ever in any doubt, or I mean, we always, when you're doing healing work, we always ask for things to be done in the greatest good. You're absolutely right. It needs to be in alignment with that. And all the healing work that we do is always done in alignment with divine will. It's the other thing, because otherwise we get into some very dodgy territory. Lawrence, great. Yeah. Yes, still speak with Jane a lot. Yes, that's it, Linda. That's exactly it. Limbo, yeah, that's one of the words for it. Purgatory, that's the word I was looking for. Limbo, purgatory, yep. Both of those, limbo and purgatory. Purgatory, probably the worst place, probably. Anyway, okay, so Regina asks, when will I start teaching online dowsing classes? We've covered that one. She was taking the mic. Elena Christian, very interested in the concept of manifestation on power spots right in your home. Could you elaborate, maybe share an anecdote? Yes. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, basically, if you go to a sacred site, right? So if we take it outside of the home to start with, we've got earth energy flows absolutely everywhere. If you go to a sacred site, then you're likely to be encountering fairly strong energy lines and energy flows. And because that's what made it sacred, right? It's the strength of the energy that one can perceive, and it's usually got more energy to it because people have worked with it over the millennia. So the So the power center at a sacred site will be very strong, and it's acknowledged that really what you're doing by being in this space, the strongest power center, the most beneficial one, is that you're really stepping into a space where the communication between spirit, between the dimensions, is at its thinnest. So you're stepping into a position, a context. If we go back to what we were talking about earlier on, a context where your ability to communicate with your intuition and the management is greatest. Okay, so that you then transpose that idea to your power center in your home. Then basically this is why I say go out and look for that power center and sit with it. And the reason that you're doing that, looking for that most beneficial one and the one that's best for meditating, is meditation will put you in the best headspace for communicating with spirit, with the management. You're sitting in the best possible location, stroke context, in order to do that. Manifesting is all about your relationship with the management in order to heal and move on in your life, change, right? Manifesting is not, I mean, yes, if you want a big car, if you want a big house, if you want all those things like The Secret sort of suggests, you know, from some years ago, then fine. But I think you've moved on from that, and everybody is generally moving on from it. The Secret was brilliant at the time for actually just opening people's eyes to the potential. And now where we're at is really making that potential a living day-to-day thing. What we can do is to change our experience of life. That's the point. And that's where you're really truly in alignment with the management in order to affect that change, because you're always working for an improvement in your experience of life. And improvement, how do we measure that? We measure that by how our heart feels, don't we? Quite frankly, you know, it's quite straightforward. That's all there is. We're searching for a joy, for a peace, for those moments where we can just be, where we can sense the freedom of just being. And a lot of that freedom can be felt in meditation, quite frankly, because you remove the stress that we always put on ourselves day to day. And there are so many ways of doing that as well. You're going to have to clarify that one for me, Voikan. I'm not sure which what you were referring to, or what. Not sure if you dare do what. Okay, so hopefully that's helped Elena a little bit on that one. And the last question of the comments was by Louise. Her question is about water and house healing. I had a couple of these actually. I understand basically how there could be negative energy flow as a result of undesirable activity from humans and spirits, but what is the detrimental influence from water? Well, it's a really good question, and we will have to start to wrap things up a little bit, but we'll do this. And if you've got any last questions, then Kimberly, just as we come to a close, bless. Yeah, absolutely, Dixie. So water. What is the detrimental influence from water? Well, really, I think I just assumed, okay, and I did a tiny little bit of Googling this morning about this, and this was what my assumption has always been, is that water flows will set up an electrical charge, and that does seem to be the case, is that flowing water will affect the electrical charge of the rock it is flowing through. And so therefore, this is what I am assuming can be picked up as being detrimental to the human being. If we think about the way that cell phones, you know, there's the whole thing about, well, I can't remember what level we're on with this new cell phone strength, but the amount of people that are susceptible to EMF, electromagnetic frequencies from technology, is extraordinarily high. It's far higher than I ever thought it was. I mean, I see that by people, 5G, thank you, yes it is, by people, the amount of people that come to me and express their, the fact that they are affected by it. I mean, you know, physically affected by it, you know, so we know, right? But it's far higher than I ever thought it would be. And so therefore, if you get a very, very sensitive person, And a lot of the house healing work is well, house healing work inevitably, as far as I can see, is working with highly sensitive people, a classification of people that is, psychologically accepted by the mainstream medical profession, right? So, but they don't accept the geopathic stress because it's so blah. But anyway, these people are affected by the tiniest of influences. And so if you've got a water line that's setting up one kind of charge in one set of rock, and maybe there's another one going at maybe as a slightly different charge, you're going to get an imbalance. Or even if just those two are the same charge and it's not agreeing with the amount of water that you've got in your body, whatever percentage that is, then that's where the detrimental aspect is going to come. It's that imbalance, it's that disharmony, the dis-ease, as we often say. So that's why water, that we would so easily think, well, what can be harmful about water? Well, water, underground water flows, it's like anything else in our existence. There can be always a negative aspect to everything. The flip side of love is hate, anger, fear, all these things. So even the nicest things have a flip side, even water. Next to the house, that's probably okay. That's probably okay, Lena. Yes, it does. That's right. Water is, Debbie, that's absolutely right. Water is phenomenally effective at carrying energy, human intent, particularly, as Mr. Emoto would tell us. Regina, reading about blocking detrimental water lines with copper rods. Yep. I don't do it. I do it with intention, Regina. Everything, all the house healing work that I do, well, virtually all the house healing work that I do is with intention. You can do it with rods. As I said before, you can go along and pop a copper rod or something like that in place. And what you're doing is you're working with intention. As you're hammering that, you're basically saying, this will fix it. And you're using the energy of the physicality to drive that intention and the physical rod into the space. But you can do it without the physical. This will do it. You do it with intention that is created, and the similar amount of energy can be created through that connection. So it means that you can work remotely, as I do. There are also other ways of blocking the EMF signals as well as just intention. Beth, hello. I'm going to have to say goodbye because we're right on the end of it. It's now 4:30 in the UK BST, and we're going to pull it to a close. Well, Dixie, in your case, this is what I'm trying to get at, is that it's because you need to, it's about the management constantly telling you there's something here for you to look at. And then you or your dad fixes it, and then it shifts again. Management goes, he still hasn't got the message. There's something here for you to look at. And what they mean by there's something here for you to look at is you. Within, it's you, your place. It's not to say it's your fault. It's to say just allow things to readdress, to rebalance around you by looking at your life, as we've discussed, and looking at the balance in your life and working with that. Don't see the energy flows, don't see these things as being separate to you. They are integral to you. Your world is integral to you. Carol, yes, I'm afraid. Sorry, I'm going to have to go very, very shortly. Do you believe the belief of the person you're doing the work for makes a difference on how much the intention works? It does make a difference, Kimberly. I call you Kimberly because I'm not sure whether you object to Kim. It does make a difference, but equally, you can create change even when somebody isn't aware that healing is being done for them. So it works both ways. Yeah, Nancy, it's really about raising your ability to be less sensitive, isn't it? Somehow, it is possible to sort of to work on being, to become more solid. Don't mean solid. Homeopathy, Nancy. Have you tried homeopathy? Drop me a line if you like. I can't remember whether you're in the UK or the USA. Okie dokie. Yes. Okay. Well, we're doing one more next week. That's all good. Thank you, Lean. Thank you, Sahar. Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. That's all good. So yeah, Carol, sorry about that. I know 3:30 is not a convenient time for so many people, but thanks for trying to get here. Thanks, Beth. That's very nice, very kind. Lawrence, thanks. Yeah, we'll see you next week, hopefully. All right, Julie, take care now. So we're off. Take care. Thanks, Joseph. Thanks for your questions, mate. Good ones. Digsy, take care. You get some sleep. JF. Oh, thank you. Thank you, JF. Very kind. Cheers, Reese. I'm going to go. Great, good. All right. Take care, folks. I'm going to press a button if I can remember how to do this bit. All right. See you next week then. Take care. Bye-bye.